Brilliant. Thanks, Amber. I will let you get back to some canning now, shall I?
That would be fabulous. It's apple season.
Power to Live More with Joe Dodds.
Welcome to the Power to Live More podcast, all about productivity, organisation, well-being, energy and resilience. I'm Jo Dodds, and I started this show to enable interesting people to share their stories about how they use their power to live more, and by that I mean to do the stuff that they want to do more than the stuff that they need to or should do. It's about creating a life for yourself where you have the energy, health and space to be happy and fulfilled, spending your time as you'd like, whether that be at work, home or somewhere else entirely. That's your choice.
Hello, my name is Ellie Dodds and I'm co-presenter, and today Jo is interviewing Amber Christian of Wonderly Software. Amber found us and here we are. Amber is the founder of Wonderly Software Solutions. Wonderly uses human-centered design to bring magic back to software through their product Bella Scena. Amber started Wonderly after almost a 20-year career in technology. She writes and speaks on a variety of topics both nationally and internationally. Back to the studio.
Today I'm interviewing Amber Christian of Wonderly Software Solutions. Thanks for joining me, Amber.
Thank you so much for having me. Really excited for this discussion.
Brilliant. So start by telling us a bit about who you are and what you do, and crucially, where you do it.
Mm-hmm. So I'm Amber Christian, as you said, and I live in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So that's where I'm coming from. So yes, if you hear a little bit of that Minnesota accent that a lot of people seem to know about around the world that I've talked to. So yes, I'm a tech entrepreneur, and I run my own startup company. I build a product called Bella Scena, and it's used for productivity. And we'll get into more about what Bella Scena is. So I'm based in the States and really happy to be talking with folks from overseas.
Lovely. And do you work from home, from an office, from coffee shops?
I work out of my house, which I have done for a few years now. I don't want to have office space rental, and I don't need that at this stage of the game. Hopefully someday you grow to that point, right, where you can't remotely manage all of it. But for now, I work remotely from my home.
Brilliant, lovely. I don't think I'll ever be doing that anywhere else other than my home. Well, apart from, other home from homes. I don't think I'll be doing the whole office thing. I did far too much of that in the past.
Oh, I know. I spent so many early years in my career because I did a lot of consulting work for large corporations. I've been in technology for 20 years. And so I spent probably the first 15, 16 years of my career always in an office. And it's only been in the last 3 to 4 with the nature of the type of work I've been doing that I've been working more remotely. And it is very different.
Yes, yeah. So tell us a bit about why you do what you do. So you've worked in corporate and you've done consultancy. Now you're doing your own thing. How does that all come about?
Mm-hmm. So a few years ago, I recognized there was a fundamental problem we had around meetings and productivity. And a lot of us are sitting in bad meetings, or we think to ourselves after that meeting, boy, I'd like that hour of my life back. Things weren't being tracked or followed up on. So I realized we just had this fundamental disconnect between a lot of the applications we were using and what we were really doing in real life and what we needed in real life. So that took me on a journey of saying, okay, it's time to put away that consulting career, because it was an SAP, so I did SAP implementations, and start to actually build a product that really looked at productivity differently and looked at how we manage our time differently.
And how? Tell us more about why that's different, and what you saw as the sort of issues that needed to be resolved. Because you're right, I'm sure everyone listening is thinking, yep, been in loads of those meetings. Yep, come out of those meetings and things haven't happened. And I was in one myself yesterday, and we've recently had our administrator leave, and somebody was saying we need somebody to take minutes and take actions, and I was not in the best place in that meeting. And I ended up saying, well, surely we all write our own actions down and we just go away and do them, don't we? Isn't that how it's supposed to work? We're all adults here. And then I thought that was probably not the best response, but in my view, is the actual sort of point, isn't it?
Well, yes.
tools to help us to do that in a better way might be helpful. So tell us more about
that is exactly the purpose, is how do we help people do it in a better way? So if we even just dig into that meeting, your meeting notes is the first perfect example. How many of us think back to that meeting you left where everyone walked away with a different impression about what was supposed to be done and what the actions were? And I find commonly then you circle back a week later and you say, okay, well, did you do that thing? Well, I wasn't supposed to do that thing. Oh, so we have the same meeting again and again and again because we don't really have everything tracked and followed up on. So one of the things that we've done in Bella is we started with what we call an instant meeting, which is it's basically a digital notebook, right? So you can take notes and it's collaborative, so multiple people have access to it. But then the best part of it is you can create the follow-ups right in the application and they go on your to-do list in the application. So it's all there. So it's no more of, okay, I have my handwritten notes and then I take my actions and everybody else takes their own actions, but nobody has sort of a central record of what happened. And this lets you have that more central record of what happened, along with automating that process of getting stuff on people's follow-up to-do list. So you don't, if you lose your notes or you forget them somewhere, oh, they were in a Word document this time, they were in a Google Doc the next time, Evernote. I mean, we've just heard about a tremendous amount of ways and that people aren't consistent in how they track it. So we went in with this idea of, okay, if you use this instant meeting digital notebook, you can track all that right there and it goes on everyone's follow-up lists. So that was one of the first kind of problems we were going after, is that whole idea of who said they were going to do what by when for the follow-up activities. And it's a huge issue, right? If we think about how many meetings we have to have over and over again, or how long are we chasing things because we don't have a shared understanding. And we spent a lot of time in conversations with people as we were building this product. It's really a tremendous issue. The bigger issue with it, and I thought it was just me when I was first, going after this whole meetings and productivity problem, is I would find myself, you come out of one of those meetings where you want that hour of your life back and you're frustrated, you're upset, or you're totally disengaged. At this point, you're just kind of rolling your eyes saying, oh, why do I have to do this again? And that we're creating far bigger problems because we aren't being effective with how we're running and executing our meetings and even our productivity in general.
Yes, yeah. And so do people then have to use the system to manage their task list as well, or can they integrate that with other things they do? Or I guess they could set up automation to integrate it if nothing else, but what's the intention with that?
Yes, as of right now, you would enter all of your to-dos right in Bella, in the platform itself. In the future, we'll be integrating with other platforms, but for now, you would have to put them all in that application. What we do with it is we do sync to Google Calendar. So if you actually want to plan and actually schedule out your to-dos, because there's a lot of people that say, okay, I'm going to make time for that most important to-do, put it on the calendar, and that'll sync back with Google Calendar. So we do have integration from that perspective, but we haven't yet integrated with other applications for the to-dos. We'll do that probably 3 or 4 months from now, is bring things in from other project management systems.
So the sort of journey for you was through sort of corporate and technology, and then spotting an opportunity and putting something together to resolve that, that issue. Did you always want to do that? Did you always want to find something for yourself rather than work for other people?
No, not at all. This was as big a shock to me as it didn't seem to be a shock to those who knew me, but I had my own consulting business before, and I was perfectly happy doing that, even when this idea came along. And I had never realized that I could go do that or that I should go do that. That was something that really never occurred until I finally hit this breaking point with all of this unproductive stuff, because I was noticing, even in my consulting business, I was supporting multiple different companies doing different projects. And that's definitely a freelancers and small business world, right? It's working with a whole bunch of different people, and they're all on different systems. And so the idea of being able to use Bella to help you coordinate, okay, who's going where and what. But no, I was the last person I thought that would ever start their own tech company. That was not in my life plan.
And of course, you've gone from providing a service to providing a product, creating a product, which is quite different as well.
It's extremely different. Yes, it's the service-based world. I gotten very used to what did that look like, and so it was the conferences and the relationship building and sales processes. And I was in the SAP world, right? And so I was very established in that world. Building a product is a very different animal. It's really different. There's a lot of the customer service components and things that have benefited me to be able to do that and have a lot of interaction with people. That doesn't surprise or stymie me. I don't feel the need to hide the way some people do and want to just build things. So that part was different. But even just making sure you have the right support processes in place, making sure people can find or figure things out, or there's easy ways to reach out if they have questions or if they want features, because we do such an active dialogue with our customers about, what they need in the product in order for enhancements and things. So yes, the lead times, the product cycles, it's very different when you're building something versus doing a service.
So how did you actually go about it then? So you're in corporate, you've got this great idea, or not in corporate, you're in a service business, you've got this great idea, you're going to transition to where you are now with this product and with clients and working, to develop the product. But what was the process? And I appreciate this will be the quick version.
Oh, of course.
Here for hours.
Yes, exactly. We would be here for hours if you wanted the long version. The process I used. So I used human-centered design, which really is just a fancy pants way of saying I talked to a lot of people that were interested in this problem or that had this problem. And I did that along the way. So along the way, I had sort of a series of gates we went through. The first key one was we did some interviews to understand the pain points better. And that was how I actually came to understand that the emotions around meetings were just as big as the issues of the meetings themselves, and understanding how to design and build in for that. Yeah. So that was the first step. The next step, we actually built up some mock-ups and we actually showed them to some people and gathered a whole bunch of feedback. So we did a review with about 30 people to actually understand what we were proposing to solve, like what did they think of that solution? And from there, we actually started building the solution, and along the way, continuing to collect feedback from people, because that's what's been a little different about my process. A lot of people have this whole philosophy of saying, you'll hear, especially Facebook made this really famous, and I don't think it was for better. They had this whole concept of move fast and break things, just shove things out there, just put them in there and have people just sort of deal with it. I wasn't like that. So it took us about 2 years to actually do the build. So I was still working full time while I was doing this on the side as well. So for me, it was about being intentional and thoughtful about how we designed and brought our product to market. And that's what we'll keep doing, because software is something you're constantly iterating and developing, right? And you're constantly adding more things to. So my process looked and felt probably a little different than that traditional just shove something out there type of philosophy.
Yes, yeah. And so what then comes to mind for me is how the process is what you've described, but then as you move forwards, it's about sort of doing the day job, but also continuing, as you say, to take feedback and then developing further. And then I'm sort of thinking, well, it must be there's development, there's promotion, there's customer service. Immediately you end up with a really quite complex complex business. How do you personally, or how do you manage that as an organization, and how do you personally manage your time to do that? Because at the beginning, when you have no customers and you're just asking lots of people for ideas, it's probably fairly simple to organize your time, but as soon as you have a product and customers as well, and people wanting improvements and all that sort of stuff, and you have to go and find more customers, all of a sudden you have lots of moving parts. Discuss.
Oh, the moving parts. Yes. It's like a proverbial chess match. You're moving, but there's not just one move at a time. There's about 6 happening at a time, right?
Yeah.
For me, right now, where I'm at, right, because I'm early stage and we've been in the market for a few months, and so I'm in that adding more and more customers to the platform, as well as doing the enhancements. It's what we really do to manage some of the feedback is we actually collect all of the feedback and we keep things in a backlog, and to actually look at what all people are requesting. So I look for a lot of commonality in feedback in order to help me around the prioritization of what to actually add to the product. That gets added in addition to the roadmap we already have, right? Because that's one thing that's come out of previous feedback and features that we know we need to build. So that alone, that whole thing is complex at the very outset. But that I'm used to that kind of work because that's what I've done for many years in implementation world and the project management part. The other side is how do you actually engage in that new customers, right? But for me, it's all about prioritization and actually being super intentional about the scheduling. So one of the things that I do, I try to keep it dead simple because I don't want my processes way too complicated, right, for managing my time because there's enough other complexity there. So one of the big things I do to make sure as a business that I'm always moving forward is I take that one thing that I really need to get done on any given day and make sure that time is scheduled on the calendar so I can be super intentional about that piece of the business that I'm moving forward that day. Whether that means it's a blog post, whether that means it's going on to a podcast, whatever that thing is, I try to be super intentional about that and put it on the calendar. That keeps that piece moving forward. Then you have to have some flexibility past that because you don't know what will come in for customer support or additional information people need.
Yes, yeah. I've started to do that one thing bit recently on the basis that a lot of my guests have talked about 3 things for the day, but it's odd. But the minute I start thinking about 3 things, then I think it's really difficult to prioritize 3 things. It's so much easier, I think, to prioritize the one thing. I guess the book of the same name would say the same, but that there is always one absolutely vital thing to move the business forwards that you can identify in the moment. 3 just I think makes it start to get a bit too too nuanced and so on. So interesting that you're doing that one thing as well.
Yes, I try to do that one thing. That's the biggie. And I've even got some tips, and sometimes it's been like, okay, we'll put 5 things on the calendar, but I've even boiled that down to do one. But here's the thing about the one, do the worst one. That's actually what I would tell you, that one thing, the thing you're procrastinating about, right? We all have it. It's like, oh, I really should do this. Oh, it's easier to go do these other things. Get that one that is painful for you done, scheduled on the calendar, because it actually really jumpstarts your productivity. But you're right, it is one thing. And it's not, your brain can only hold, I think they say up to 5 things at a time. And so by focusing on that one, you want to shut out the noise and distraction and make sure you move that one forward. And I have whole other theories, and I'd be curious to hear your input on this as well. This whole journey of growth that we're all walking on, it can get really easy after a while to get burned out, exhausted, or thinking, why am I doing this? We all kind of go through those emotional periods where we're like, well, what did I even really get done this week? And so one of the things around encouraging people to say, take that one thing, but not only that, get it on your calendar. I don't care if you use Google Calendar, use whatever, but get it on the calendar. Because one of the things you can then do is you can start to reflect back on time with those things that you're getting completed. I've noticed personally, since I've really started doing that, it's been extremely helpful in those moments or those days where you're the, as I like to call it, the emotional gas tank or the emotional batteries are low, where you can look back and go, oh, but look at all these other things that I got done. Okay, all right, I can pick myself back up. Let's keep going. So there's a whole hidden benefit to why do you be intentional about it and why it needs to be on your calendar. Otherwise, you lose it off of lists.
Yeah.
If it's on handwritten lists, if it's in other side applications and it just disappears, get that thing on the calendar. That's the biggest encouragement I give people.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I do a daily gratitude thing using the app. I can't even think what it's called now. Something about 5 minutes a day or something. Hang on. The 5-minute journal. And it asks for 3 things you're going to do today. And I actually consistently put things like enjoy and chill and all the nice positive things about having a lovely life. But I use one of those 3 slots for the one thing. So I do write it down. So sort of a bit like you said, so that I've been intentional. I've also highlighted it so that at the end of the day, when I look back and I know that I've done that thing, I know that, it's been a successful day because that was the one thing that I must get done, regardless of anything else. And obviously the enjoying and chilling and everything else is part of that too.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you're right. We have turned work into a little bit of drudgery, haven't we? And we can be really hard on ourselves. Let's be honest. We can be super hard on ourselves. And I'm supposed to get 14 things done today, and if I don't, like the whole mental chatter that we have about what we're supposed to do versus what we would ever expect anyone else to accomplish. And that's why I want to talk about one thing and get that done so you can really look back and say, okay, I did get this done, or I did move this one thing forward, because we do need to practice more gratitude and more reflection, because it helps us even just emotionally balance everything out. And I think it took me to hitting my 40s to starting to realize some of this. Like, hey, you need to step back and be a little more grateful about what you accomplished and recognize that and give yourself a little credit for it. Because most of us are always just push. Oh, well, I got those 4 things, but I didn't get these 6 done, and so therefore I wasn't successful. No. Rewire ourselves, be a little kinder to ourselves, get that one done, and smile when you get it done.
Absolutely. So what about the practical side of getting those things done that you have got to do? So you're using your calendar. Do you use your system?
I do every day. Every day. Yes. And it's funny because I've conditioned myself. I come in the morning, and one of the first things I do is I dump out anything that showed up overnight. I'm like, and these other random things. Just get it out of my head. Because again, we can only hold so many things in our head. And that's part of all this mental stress we add to ourselves as we try to keep all this stuff in our head, or we keep them on these manual lists. So I use my product to do that. Then I look across what my day actually looks like and see, well, is it meetings? I look for, how do I manage my energy for that given day as well? How am I feeling that particular day? Am I tired that day? Okay, well, I should pick off, once I get the important thing done, then I should just do things that are much lower brain input, etc. So I've really been looking a lot more at where is my energy at for that given day. And again, if you get that most important stuff done, that really helps for that. So for me, it's about dumping things out of my head and then really looking across my day to figure out where am I actually going to get that stuff done. And then I drag and drop it onto my calendar so that I've got those time slots there, because that's part of the whole point of Bella, is being able to integrate your to-do list with your calendar and then all your meetings and your meeting notes as well.
And how do you determine those peaks and troughs in terms of your energy moving sort of forward, in the morning, at the beginning of the week? How do you know how that works for you?
I know that the beginning of the week I typically have more energy, and early in the morning is when I have my most energy. So for me, that deep thought work where I really have to put a lot of mental input, that comes early in the morning for me, because that's where my energy is greatest. I also know that once you hit about 3 p.m., your energy goes off a cliff. And so one of the things you should do is you don't want super important meetings 3 p.m. or later, because you're not going to be totally mentally as in the same place as you would be earlier in the day. So when I actually structure my days where I can, right, and not everybody can do this, right, I totally understand that, but where I can, I try to move meetings up a little earlier and before 3 p.m. So I do my deep work early in the morning, do my meetings kind of mid-morning, and then 3 p.m. and after, it's I just got to get this stuff done. Doesn't require a lot of brain input because my energy is lower.
Mm-hmm. And what about other tools and apps that you use? Obviously, you use your own system, which is, remind me, you keep saying Bella, it's Bella Scene, isn't it? Is that the
Bella Scena? Bella Scena. Yep.
Scena.
It's Italian for beautiful scene.
Beautiful, yes. Yeah. I'm not beautiful. I assumed scene was seen, but my Italian's not what it could be.
I know most people go, oh, when they see the second word. No, it's scene. And it's a Scena, but it's just beautiful scene. It's about giving you more perspective, right? So with Bella, it's really about everything centrally managed around the calendar, integrated to the calendar, but having one kind of main view of all of it, your to-dos, your meetings, your notes, etc., on the calendar. And so that's why it's a beautiful scene. And so other than Bella, what other things do I use? I use things like Google Drive, right? To store a lot of my documents on Google Drive. Of course, Gmail and stuff for email as well. I also use project management products as well. So I'm a heavy Jira user. I use some of the Atlassian products, and I use that for managing all of the product, what we call our product backlog, for all the features and things that we're going to build. And so I definitely have to use that quite a bit. And then also in terms of productivity, I use a marketing product called CoSchedule, and that really helps me get things scheduled for Twitter and for Instagram and Facebook, etc. And so that helps me optimize some of the marketing scheduling work as well. So those are some of the key tools that I use.
Yeah, lovely. And what about other people helping you? I'm assuming that you haven't coded it all yourself.
Oh, no, I have not.
Well?
Yeah, so we have a team of about 6 or 7 people at a time. So I use mostly contractors to do that. And that allows me to flex up and down because I'm a bootstrap company, right? So I've self-funded this. And that's why I kept the consulting business, right, to be able to build that. And so, yeah, we have about 6 or 7 people working on it at any given time.
And how do you manage that with them, as in you talk a lot to the customers, you know what they want, and then you have to sort of translate that and make sure it happens? What's your sort of process for that?
A lot of that gets done through managing our backlog. So I really look through all of the feedback. And what I tend to find is, like with my development team, they don't want to see everything because they don't have a filtering mechanism for it. They want me to filter it first and condense it. And so that's what I do with feedback. So I filter and condense that. And for us, it all goes into our project management product, into Jira. So we keep our backlogs in there, and then we actually use Agile framework. So we manage 2-week sprints. So it's like 2-week little mini projects to actually deliver sets of functionality. And we plan those out 1 to 2 in advance of where we're working. We can't really do much more than that because we don't have we don't know 100% what we're going to do. We do directionally, but we're gathering so much feedback and building. So typically I take all of that feedback, and then it's up to me to condense that and get that into a method that is more translatable to what they would actually need to do from a build perspective.
Mm-hmm. And what about yourself in terms of keeping yourself healthy and energized to run this business and continue with your other business, as you just mentioned as well? How do you make sure that those things don't slip through the gaps?
Yes. Well, I'm at a stage now where the other business is winding down. So thankfully, I'm not trying to manage a full-time and a full-time. That was hairy. That was hard. Those 2 years, that was really hard. But it was primarily to fund getting the first product built. And we're now there. So I don't do that anymore. So I'm primarily focused on Bella and just simply growing Bella at this stage of the game. But in terms of how do I stay sane? So I have certain non-negotiables in my life. One of them is sleep. I have to have a certain amount of sleep each night. And that also kind of just seems to go up and down with the seasons a little bit for me. But making sure I get enough sleep is the first one that, I need, depending on the night, anywhere from 6.5 to 8 hours of sleep, depending on how I'm feeling. So that's the first non-negotiable, that I make sure I get enough sleep. And the second one is I have a couple of hobbies that I like to do outside of work that are also my non-negotiables. And one of them, and people always laugh and they kind of look at me, right? Because I work in tech and I've been in tech for 20 years. So my hobby is canning, like, thing grandma did with produce, and I make jams and jellies and pasta sauces and applesauce. And yes, totally. People are like, what? That is my other non-negotiable. When it's canning season, my weekends and that time to do that, non-negotiable. Everything else has to move at that time.
Well, it's interesting. Before we came on, I was saying that I was trying to sort of scoff my lunch because I was a bit delayed on it and stuff. And I've got I had the most amazing present for my birthday from my mother-in-law. It was a big birthday, and it's something called a Thermomix. I don't know if you've heard of it, but I hadn't heard of it until earlier in the year, just because I'd seen it on Facebook and people were raving about it, and I looked to see how expensive it was, and it is fairly extortionate. And I thought it can't be as good as, why would you pay that money for it? And everyone says it's brilliant. This is just, I'm intrigued. So I had to go along to a demonstration just to see, what this amazing product was. And of course, I decided it was truly amazing and I needed one. I wasn't sure that it was going to happen because they are expensive. And then I got this one. I think the deal is I'm supposed to take meals round to her on a regular basis now. But it is truly amazing, and it's funny because I've never been somebody who makes chutneys and jams and things like that, but this will do that really well. And I've been looking at making lemon curd, for example, and apple chutney, because I was given loads of apples by some friends, and yeah, so my lunch was a mushroom stroganoff, which I would never have made for my lunch in the olden days because that would just seem like too much effort. Because this machine is so exciting, I made myself mushroom stroganoff, and it was like the best. And so I'm one who's not incredulous that you do canning. I'm actually just investigating, the size of jar that I should be using and all that sort of stuff. So I need to come to you and I need advice, obviously.
It's a hobby I got into years ago, and for me it was really about being able to have local food year round, right? So I live in Minnesota, and your climate, you don't have fresh produce year round that's great and ripe and local, right? I mean, you do the same thing. And so for me it was about, when you have some of that produce and it's at its absolute peak, it is so good. And so I'll go strawberry picking in the summer, and then I'll come home and we'll can. My husband and I will can. And that's just kind of part of our traditions, right? And it's relaxing. It gets me off the computer and it just lets me mentally disengage. And that's a big piece of it. And I also wanted, I'm in America, boy, they love to dump sugar in everything. And I don't want that. And so for me, that was another reason that I started canning, was because I didn't want a ton of added sugar and crud that sometimes gets added to our food here. Yes. So I started doing that. And I've spent a lot of time UK and Europe as well, where things aren't just sugared like crazy. And I found I liked that better. It actually tasted like real food more than something that was just way too, sweet or artificial tasting. So when I started making a lot of my jams and things, I don't add sugar to them. And I don't add artificial sweeteners or anything. It's just that ripe produce. And so when I give it away to neighbors and friends, people are like, it tastes like real fruit. That always makes me laugh. I'm like, that was supposed to be the point all along. And friends from Europe will often say, they're like, oh, it tastes like home. I hear that a lot from some of my European friends that are expats and live in the U.S.
Yes, yeah. Well, just like it's most days I cook something. I made, what else did I make today? Courgette and cheese bites, which might sound disgusting to people who don't like courgettes, but they're like little cheesy scone type things. They're so nice. It was a new recipe, so I had not tried it before, and I will try it on little Doddsy and find out whether she likes it, because she doesn't like courgette. So if she likes it, it's definitely a win. But yeah, so every day I plan to make something, and the thing I've noticed actually with it is that I'm not throwing food away in the way that I might have done in the past, because everything that I have I can make into something. The amount of soup I've made in the last 6 months is it's ridiculous, but just to sort of weave that in amongst the work, and that's one of the other advantages of working from home, isn't it, that we can do that.
It is. You fit that in, and food is another big one to me. Like I enjoy actually preparing food, cooking food. For me, it's not drudgery, but that I don't overcomplicate it either. So it doesn't have to be some crazy complex or difficult thing. But I enjoy that simple pleasure of just stopping and preparing food and giving yourself a little bit of pause. Because let's face it, as entrepreneurs and we're developing businesses, we work a lot. Work a tremendous amount, right? And even in the normal corporate jobs, people are working a lot as well. And so having that ability, again, it's about that disconnect, right?
Yeah.
And kind of reconnect with food and family and other things. And that's fine if after that, fine, you might have to go back to work, go back to do the other things, but it's building in that break and that almost that little bit of rest period before you go again, as opposed to, I try not to always just eat on the run. That's not good. I've done that in years past. I know what that looks like. Okay. I am speaking from experience. So there's no judgment here. I know what that's like.
I ate most of my stroganoff at the table. I just ate the last 3 mouthfuls on my way upstairs to talk to you. Okay. I wasn't running. I was walking. So, learning and improving yourself, you've changed your type of business and your sort of offering and the way that you work with people. How have you continued to develop yourself to be able to do that and to continue to do that?
For me, it's about learning a whole new set of skills, right? So lately it's about, wow, guess what? You get to master marketing in a whole different way, right, than you ever had to do before. Because I knew what worked in the previous business, but most of that was relationships and referrals. And you still have that, absolutely have that in the product world, but you have to help people become aware of you. And so now it's been about learning to do more videos and doing more marketing, and so doing podcasts and other things to see where the message resonates with people, right? Because everybody has to find those solutions that work for them. So for me, it's been about working on the sales and marketing skills and really working to strengthen those, and having to take a step back and look at myself as an entrepreneur and ask myself, where do I need to grow? That's been a big one.
Yes. Yeah. So let's get more questions. What about those days where it all goes horribly wrong? How do you cope with those?
A whole lot of grace. Hang on for dear life and give yourself some grace. That's truly it, because those days where it just all goes sideways and you thought you knew what your day was going to be like, and that's just not what happened. Most of the time it's just hang on, get through whatever it is, and regroup the next day. I try really hard not to beat myself up over it, because that happens. And I just also try to observe and make sure if that's happening day after day after day after day, then I'm missing something, and try to step back and reflect. But if it happens on any one day, hang on for dear life, get through it, regroup for the next day.
Yes, yeah. And what's those days where you get to live more? So that's where I talk about you getting to do more of the things that you want to do and less of the things that you feel you should do or you have to do. What does that day look like?
For me, that day, right now, actually, I'm starting to enjoy exploring video. I hated it when I was first doing it, but I'm getting ready to do a series of more videos, because as I've been talking about the story of my company, most people say, wow, do you have this captured anywhere? Oh, not really. So now they're like, oh, we love it when you do video. I was just really reluctant video person. And then I had a really good friend of mine who's like, come on, we're going to get on some videos. And I started getting on videos with him, and he posts them out on LinkedIn, and they're completely candid and people love them. And I'm like, okay. And every time I do videos with the people that see them are like, these are really cool. And I'm always like, why? They're like, yeah, you're a human. on the videos. Like, you're not stuffy. You have funny facial expressions sometimes, and you come across like a person. And it's like, oh, okay. If that's all it takes, that's great. So for me, that where am I headed? It's embracing creativity in taking those next steps of growth. I had to spend so much time just getting the product built, and I had to harness my inner engineer. Okay, we're going to get this done. We're going to meticulously plan all of it. But now, as I'm getting to spend more time in sales and marketing and conversations, I'm getting to re-embrace my creative side, and that is what I am really starting to love.
And I guess as things progress, your role will change anyway. I mean, you're still very much in the startup phase and development phase, aren't you? I mean, I guess you'll always develop the system, but it must be a much more rapid development process at the moment.
Yes, exactly. And that part is always going to be there, but the next pieces will iterate as the company grows, right? And so I know my role will change as it grows, as I hire more people in the company. So I'm prepared for that. And so right now in the journey, it's a lot of, you still manage all the details. I'm really nervous about that day when I don't know everything going on. I will be honest and say I'm really nervous about I still hand over, and of course people do all of their work. I'm not a control freak, but I still kind of know all of the moving pieces. And that day when I don't I know it's coming, and I know it's not that far off because of various hiring plans and things. But I'm like, okay, that'll be the next level of just getting used to that, of just handing stuff away and letting people execute on strategies. And that doesn't mean you have to know every detail. And I know that's coming, and I know it's not that far out.
Yeah, it's good to sort of be aware of that, though, because I mean, in sort of corporate startup environments, quite often the people who start the organization aren't the best people to continue it because of their sort of strengths and also their personalities, and the fact that they don't get what you've just said, which is that there are different phases, that they have to behave differently within those phases, and that's sort of part of the challenge, isn't it? So good to be thinking about it ahead, I guess.
Yes, it's absolutely part of the challenge, and realizing that sometimes you can take a part of your business so far, and then someone else needs to come in and go forward with it, because one, there's only so much of you to go around. That's one of the big things. And it's really easy to say, well, I should do that. Well, I should do that. I should do that. And at some point, that's a recipe for burnout. And you have to figure out, what are those things that, one, do they actually just completely drain you? And so you should outsource them if you can, or figuring out where are those skills that you can find someone to do. So what are those unique things that only you can do? And that for me is where I've realized I really have to embrace and do a lot more of being the public face of the company, and being in a lot more conversations and those dialogues with people, because that's something only really I can do. Some of the management of the actual product, I can have people do that for me as I cast the vision and get further with that. But there's those certain gifts that we have, or those things that only we can do. So those we absolutely have to do, and we have to protect doing those to grow our business.
Yes. Yeah. So it's been really fun interviewing you, Amber. Thanks for joining me. Tell people how they can find out more about you and get in touch with you.
Sure. Well, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Amber Christian, and my company is Wonderly Software Solutions, so you can follow us there. The product, Bella Scena, you can find at meetbellacena.com, and I'll also send you a code so your listeners can get 50% off the first 2 months, because that's fun and that's how I roll. So I'll send that to you as well, in case people want to try that out. So that's probably the easiest ways to find me. You can also follow us on Instagram. We have Bella Scena on Instagram, and also on Twitter as well, and Facebook. So basically all the major social networks, you can find us there as well if you'd like to follow us.
Brilliant. Thanks, Amber. I will let you get back to some canning now, shall I?
That would be fabulous. It's apple season.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.
All this information is available in the show notes. If you just go to powertolivemore.com / in this case 138, then you'll find them there. And this week I just want to say, hope you had a good Christmas, and obviously Happy New Year. But also to remind you that sometimes stuff that seems really hard to do isn't so much hard as that you're trying to do it at the wrong time. So during the holiday, I have been attempting, quite unsuccessfully for most of it, to reconcile my accounts because I got stuck reconciling PayPal, and I used all the different reports that PayPal produce, and it was really difficult and it wasn't working, and I was getting stuck, and it's taken months to get to this stuckness. But I knew I had to get it done because the accounts need to go in by the end of January and all that sort of stuff. And then today I suddenly had this realization of a route to do it, and actually very easily managed to reconcile how much did I do? About a year's worth of PayPal, having not been able to do it at all. And I've just got a few more months left to go, and then it's all done, and I can send the accounts off to my accountant. And it just reminded me that sometimes we struggle with stuff because we keep trying to do it, even though we're not ready to, or we don't really know the best way to do it yet. And it becomes a sort of, albatross around our neck where we're worrying about not getting it done, and, attempting it for 5 minutes, maybe, or maybe longer, and, it not working and getting frustrated and all that sort of stuff. And actually, if you just let things sometimes percolate a bit and you pause and take the pressure off, and sort of that whole thing about doing less, it comes right. And that's exactly what happened today. I literally went into the accounts, found the right report, worked out a way to do it, and did it. And within like 10 minutes, I'd reconciled 1 month, and I went back into the previous month, and I went back into the previous month to that, and I kept going and did so much of it. And I now know exactly how I'm going to do it moving forwards. I had vaguely done some of it a week or two ago with what I thought was the best way of doing it, and it wasn't right. It was too difficult, wasn't working, and it was going to be a bodge job at best. Now what I've done is actually going to work really well, has worked really well, as I say, for a year's worth of figures, and is just so simple. But it took me to sort of forget about it, walk away, and come back to actually find the right solution. So do remember that when you have things that are really difficult, sometimes it is about just forgetting about them, waiting till the next day, waiting until the next week, waiting till that moment where you have either the right energy or the right sort of intuition or the right attitude or whatever it might be to find the route to get through and get whatever it is done that you need to get done. So I hope you have a really good new year. And you might remember last month I started doing what I called monthly webinars, and the next webinar is coming up on the first Monday of the month. So the next webinar will be on Monday the 6th of January, and I'll tell you more about the topic when I speak on the next podcast, which will be out next week on the 3rd of January. So I look forward to speaking to you then. Again, the show notes are at powertolivemore.com/138, and we look forward to speaking to you next week.
Use your power to live more.